Happy Easter and welcome back to a brand new devlog. Devlog number 3 in my Grand Strategy Game series. My name is Thomas and I am developing, as you might have guessed, a Grand Strategy game. Originally, I planned for this video to show the complete map. So, video title, this is the map or something like that. Unfortunately, the map is not yet finished. I think something that everyone who has done any development can recognize themselves in. It is the fact that things take time, and they take much more time than what you originally think. So for every step, a couple steps forward, you have to take a couple steps backward and redo something that you have already done, and so on and so forth. But fear not, I have done a significant amount of progress. So I think this is. So this will be a good video to show that progress and also kind of talk about the challenges that I'm facing ahead. But yeah, there are a lot of really cool things in this episode. We will talk about height maps, terrain maps, we will have dynamic terrains, we blend different terrain types together. We have different map types and different map modes. And the coolest thing of all, this is all done in shaders. So if you like shaders, you will really find this episode interesting. So without any further ado, let's get started. A short recap of where we left off in the last episode. In the last episode, we went from having this map, this region map, as you can see right here. So this is an image that shows all the different regions in our map, where each region has its own unique color ID. And then we took that map, processed it through Godot, and from that we got 3D meshes, where each and every single unique region got its own mesh. So now the next step is to apply a height map on these meshes so we can get some crooks and crannies and mountains and some real 3D terrain. Yes. First of all, we can recap shortly what the height map is. A height map is, as you see, a black and white picture that describes, that, as the name implies, the height of something. So you have the tallest point. The tallest point on the image is pure white, and the absolute lowest point is black. And then you have all the other heights are the different shades of gray in between. So, for example, on my image, you can see that the lowest point is the sea, so that is completely black. And you have Mount Everest, and those mountain ranges are the tallest, so they are complete white. And everything else, again, are shades of gray in between. In professional games, game developers, they draw these maps by hand, and you kind of have to do that to get good relative scale. But I am just but one humble man, so I have to get my height map somewhere else. So I found this site called Tangrams, which is a height map based from a satellite image that is also cleared for commercial use. So here I am at the site. So you can see here is the world, the height map. I can scroll in if I want more detail of a certain area. I can choose whether or not to include ocean data or not. And I can also choose max and minimum elevation, which means what point will be registered as the lowest and or the tallest. So the problem with using the real world as this is that, as I mentioned, the absolute tallest point is, for example, Mount Everest. And since everything is in relation to that, then the lowest points of the world, which are still above water, for example, the Netherlands or Florida or something like that, it's so close to zero, it's so far away from the tallest point that it's almost invisible on the map. So that means that we have to do some tweaks and adjustment to get it to work in our game. We will adjust the Heightmap image in Krita, which is a wonderful and yet again free software. So here we have our Heightmap. So we can just go to filter and then go to adjust and then levels, and then change the levels as we want. The goal here is to make the barely visible areas, like which I mentioned, for example, Florida, to make them more visible. The second thing we will do here is to create a normal map, which we will use to tell the game engine, Godot, from here, height to normal map, which will tell the engine how to reflect the light. So we will get proper shadows. Now that we have both the normal map and especially the height map, we are ready to put it into the game. Of course, we could process the height map through Blender or small other terrain tool to create the terrain, but I want to make it in real time. So that's why we are going to implement it through the use of shaders. So you might wonder, what is a shader? A shader is a sub-program that runs directly on the graphic card, and they control how the pixels on the screen are rendered. So it doesn't really change what is there, but it changed how you see it, how you perceive it. So you can have a totally flat mesh, but you can see it as something completely different through the use of shaders. Or you can do something as simple as change colors from blue to red or whatever. So you can kind of imagine it like taking on different kind of sunglasses. Normal ones, they just make everything a bit darker, but other ones can make something look 3D, for example. So it's kind of like that. Now to the game, you can see that I have created here 2 flat meshes. So on the top, we have a water mesh, and right under it, if I hide the water, this is just a mesh that has a grass texture on it. So they are almost on top of each other, but the grass one is a few millimeters below the water one, like so. So now, if I go to the shader, and I go to the vertex function and enable the scaling of vertices. So what this one does is that it goes through the height map, and it checks the height of every pixel there and measures it against the vertex points on the mesh and scale it accordingly. So by removing this one, boom, suddenly we have something that really resembles a world map. It's kind of hard to see, but it's actually different heights on everything here. So if we go a bit, to go a bit closer, now you can see it more clearly. So you can see how the landmass is kind of coming up from the sea. Yes, and let's also enable the normals. So I have it both in the vertex shader, so it enables there, and as well as just plug in the normal map in the fragment function. So now we can see that there are proper shadows on the mountains. And this one also react in real time towards the light. So if I change the placement of my sun, you can see that the terrain reacts to it. So perfect. Now that we know that that is working, The next step is to implement this to all the different individual meshes that are the regions of the map. If you remember from the last video, I made 3D meshes, so every one of the regions in the map had their own unique 3D mesh. And now that the Heightmap was in place in the shader, I applied the shader material to the meshes, and they turned out all kinds of weird. So obviously it was because the meshes or the vertex points were a bit like scattered around all over the mesh, and for the material to work perfectly, then you needed the vertex points to be perfectly in a grid along the whole mesh. While I was kind of figuring out how to make that happen, how to subdivide the mesh evenly, then a thought suddenly came to me. Why do I actually need each region to be its own mesh? And sure, I needed to be able to modulate the color, for example, or do stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of it actually. So can I do that in another way? And the answer is yes, I can. I can do it in shaders. So basically, I just the whole process of creating the 3D meshes, threw it out the window. But there's another thing that we make alongside the meshes, and that is the collision box, which we use to recognize whether or not we have the mouse over the mesh or if we're clicking it. Do we still need that, or is there another way to do that as well? And yes, there is another way to do that. So that means that the whole process that I had that were basically my whole first video on, where we like go through and read this whole region picture, we don't need that at all. So that means that at this point, I'm throwing away all the progress I made in the first, second, and even the 2.5 episode. So yeah. Before going back to how I solved not having separate meshes anymore, let's go back to the map itself. So with the shaders, the first thing we are now going to implement is to separate using a terrain map. Like this. The cool thing with working a shader is that you can actually work with it in real time in the editor. So this is still a bit crude. So I have to work with the blending. But the basic idea is that the terrain map will separate and show where I will use sand and where it will be grass and where it will be snow. And then we can apply some dynamic terrain. So the first thing is to apply a beach. So I want to have a beach texture, and basically it's rule based. So everything below a certain threshold will use the beach texture. So to show this better, I will remove the water like this. And apply the beach parameter, like so. So now you will see that everything below a certain threshold have like this sand beach texture. So the bottom of the sea, and also it's on the edges between the lowest points, like so. Secondly, I want to apply rock texture on the slopes. So where the slope is very steep, I want to apply rock. So that is the second one. Like so. You don't see it that well, but it is there, and you can kind of see it that the beach texture is not as prominent anymore, where it is very steep, which is the kind of the idea. You don't have beaches on cliffs, for example. Then we want more rock. I want everything above a certain threshold to be rock, like so. And then lastly, I want on top of that again the tallest points to have snow. And all of these values can, of course, be changed, and I will have to do a lot of changes before this is production ready. But this is where I am at right now. So, anyways, I think it's really cool actually, and it's heading in the right direction. And then, when we first are in the groove, let's also do something with the water. So some reflection of the sun is in order, like so, and also add some waves using normal maps, like this. So there is still a way to go, like some edge foam, and also to make it a bit transparent in the beaches along the edge of the map. But all in all, I think this is starting to look real good. One problem is that, as you probably have guessed, this is a very heavy. It's quite a demanding job. So what I have done is that I have split up the meshes in different chunks. So that kind of helps, because Godot will only render the chunk that you currently are looking at, and not the whole world at the whole time. But sometimes you do want to scroll out, you do want to see the whole world. So the solution for that was to create a second map, which I have called the far map. I can actually show it in the editor itself. Yeah, the far map looks like this, and basically it is very much the same procedure. The map is generated using the Heightmap, but it's just a much lower subdivide count, so it performs much better, and it does of course have all these blends and the rules that. So this is very performant. So I just mixed in a noise map to create some texture, and the same thing with the sea as well, just with another color. Let's take a look at some of the technical functionality. Now that we cannot use the collision box anymore, the method I was talking about, the other way to do it, is to use a raycast. So now, when I click somewhere on the map, I will shoot a raycast from the camera through the mouse, and then it will return a certain grid location that hits, and it will measure that against the color region picture. So, just to remind you, it's this one. So it will check the location against the pixel position and return a color code. And then I will take that color code, send it to the shader, and tell it, color all the pixels of this color to gray, which is the color gray. So I can just show you. It's now we're in game, and I can click a region, for example, the UK. So as you can see, it did light it up. And you also see on the left-hand side here, it's Great Britain, in the content Europe, and the NA is the player that owns it. I can assign players, and if I then click it again, you see it, okay, it's owned by player 2. And I can check Scandinavia, it's also Europe. And all these, the information are stored in its own node, which just contain information about the name, the continent, and the player that owns them. So if I assign again, then I will redistribute to other. So the map modes are made in a similar way, but instead of sending to the shader the region I clicked, I will send a whole array of color codes based on the information that is held in the different nodes. So if I click continents, then it will send all the different first an array of all the color codes that is within Europe and tells it color them blue. And the same thing with Asia, Africa, and so on. And then it's the same thing with the players. So you can see the blue one is player 1, for example. So if I send again, you see that the player has now different regions under his control. And the last cool function is the region button. And basically it just shows a line that separates all the regions. So what the shader does here actually is that it checks, okay, does the region next to me have a different color? So it checks against the region image. If yes, draw a gray pixel, like so. So yes, yeah, and also this made it so that when you scroll out, you have the farm map, as I told you, and if you zoom in, then you will get the near map. So yes, this is what I have for now. So thank you for watching. And if you like what you see and you want to follow my journey ahead, then please like and subscribe. Also, if there are certain parts of this that you would like to see a more in-depth tutorial of, please let me know. I do make tutorials on this channel as well. So until next time, bye bye.